But one man today believes he can tell where all of them once stood, using a technique as curious as anything encountered by Stukeley.
Now, I believe that each and every one of the stones of this circle is still here, has not disappeared. It's still here in aura or emanation. I'm just going to use this Y rod, which is plastic, so there's nothing magnetic. I'm going to put tension on it like that. See what happens when I go towards the stone. Now, there's an aura or energy field around that stone. And if I use these other rods, just by way of demonstration, and I'm just going to hold these more or less parallel and fairly horizontal, see what happens when I go towards the stone. There's an aura or energy field around the stone. Would you like to try that, sir?
Yes.
Now, let me say that I've done this with hundreds of people, and as long as they hold the rods correctly, they all experience the same reaction. Now, just hold them parallel, don't let anything touch, and more or less horizontal, like a 6-gun, and take it slowly. Just walk it slowly. Keep going. Now, you didn't try and do that, did you?
No.
All right. Have you done this before?
Never.
Never. Thank you very much. Now, if you think that's strange, let me show you something else. Now, there's a concrete marker behind me which tells us where a stone used to be. Now, that stone is still there in aura or energy field, and we can find the shape of it. Again, this time I'll close my eyes, and if you want to, you can go over the other side just to see that I'm not sort of cheating at all, if you like, and I'll just walk in and see if I can pick up the energy field, there it is, around the stone. I'm just going to put that down there and come back again. Again, I'll close my eyes and we'll see what happens. I'll face you so that I don't know what's happening, but there, again, is the energy field around the stone, and we can find the shape of that stone by going round it, seeing where it actually extended to, just as it does on the other one. There it is. And there it is. And you'll find that Alexander Keeler did not put that concrete marker back in the right place. It's just slightly off-centre.
If the Rollright Stones was a heathen temple, then Avebury, Stukeley believed, must have been a great centre of ancient religion, a primitive cathedral. What seemed to lend it even more sacred power was a long avenue of standing stones that headed from the circle towards the south. A via sacra, Stukeley called it. Some stones in what is now known as the West Kennet Avenue were re-erected by Keeler, but many have been destroyed or are still buried, and it does not now extend very far. But a panorama Stukeley sketched shows just how much of it existed in his day. And it ended in another smaller circle, which excavation has proved did once exist. But Stukeley also found the signs of a second avenue, the so-called Beckhampton Avenue, though even in the 18th century there were few traces left. Its route is still today a matter of considerable debate. Brian Ashley thinks he knows where it went. He believes he can follow the aura or emanation of the stones, even if there is little sign of them in the ground.
The edge of the avenue and see what happens. There we go.
Yeah,
You did experience that, didn't you?
Well, there's something there, yeah.
There's something there, right.
But
well,
that's directly in line, isn't it, between the stone and...
It goes
so it's
along
heading
here.
up towards the hill.
What I'd like to do now with you is just to follow this particular flow and just see where it finishes, shall we?
Okay.
And see how it compares with Stukeley.
Right, good.
I had to admit that the dowsing rods did indicate two parallel lines of something leading towards a clump of trees. We were certainly following an old and well-worn trackway, but how old was it?
My own feeling is that this western approach, it's now called an Iron Age earthworks on the top here. Nobody's done any digging up here, so we don't know what it is. But I've got a feeling that this was a Neolithic footpath coming into the Avebury region.
And just as the other avenue narrowed...
It's almost certainly the first piece of structure that one would see coming into Avebury from the west. The West Kennet Avenue was approximately 1.5 miles long and finished in a small circle. The Beckhampton Avenue, which Stukeley first drew in 1719, he made it about 1.5 miles, and so do I, but my finish is about 200, 300 yards away from his. The circle, which is the exact dimensions, it's about 20 metres across, is the same as the sanctuary at the end of the West Kennet Avenue. And William Stukeley was quite right in the first part of his sort of designation of the avenue, and he was only about 300 yards out, because down below there is Fox's Covert, where he said it finished, although the stones had disappeared. But I believe that this is where it finished, and I'll show you the circle now. Find the edge of the circle. There it is. And if I come out here, as I move in, there's the flow of the circle, just the same as we had at Avebury. I can quite understand people having reservations about it. All I can say is that I've had an academic background and fairly straight, sceptical sort of person, and I believe in it, and I would very much like to see some kind of comparison with what I think I've discovered, and it would be interesting, wouldn't it, to sort of just compare what you might call a stupid method with the scientific method. I'm quite convinced that I've got something anyway. And there it is.
To understand more about the builders of the circles, Stukeley now examined other ancient monuments around Avebury. This is the West Kennet Long Barrow. About 5,000 years ago, in Neolithic times, 50 or so individuals were buried here, their bones piled in stone-lined compartments, after it seems their bodies had first been left in the open to decompose. Stukeley could not have known the great age of the barrow, nor entered here. It was only excavated in the 1950s. But he concluded that if the stone circles were temples, then this may have been where a high priest was buried. And assuming that all the monuments in the area were erected at the same time, if this was the burial place of a high priest, then 1/4 mile to the north might be the greatest tomb of all, perhaps that of the ruler, the Lord of Avebury. Silbury Hill. He called it the largest barrow in the country, and perhaps in all England. In fact, it's the greatest man-made mound in the whole of Europe. As usual, Stukeley was given explanations of it by local people. Some said it was the burial mound of a certain King Zell, who could be seen galloping over the downs on moonlit nights. Others that it was a sack of chalk dropped by the devil who had been on his way to bury the people of Marlborough. There have been many stories and theories about it over the years, but still no one knows what it was for. Archaeologists have tunneled into it but found nothing. Whatever its purpose, its construction was a breathtaking achievement of prehistoric man. Stukeley would often make the climb to the top to survey and sketch the surrounding downs, though his paper did tend to blow about a bit in the wind. It was also a favourite picnic spot where he would invite along interested gentlemen and their ladies who had heard of the famous Dr. Stukeley's researches. From the top here, Stukeley would have been able to demonstrate to any group of admirers he might have had with him a very accurate observation that he'd made concerning the date of Silbury Hill. In his day, there was a Roman road, which he could see quite clearly. It's now pretty well covered by the modern one, which headed from the west directly towards the mound. But then, just before reaching it, it deviated sharply to avoid it. It was a clear sign that the hill was older than the road.